All right, so welcome to another deep dive. We love getting these collections of material, and this time, well, it's really something special.
Yeah, this one is it's pretty unique.
We're diving into the world of Carnage 1nOnly. They're a creator over on YouTube, and wow.
A lot of stuff here.
Yeah, a lot of material to unpack. We've got transcripts from a whole bunch of their videos. Some titles that jump out at me are Carnage Ladder, Carnage Cadence's video. There's this really powerful one called Moonlight's Embrace Poem -C1 and 0.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
We've even got some of their freestyle work, like Carnage Let M in freestyle and Nuff Said freestyle. And to top it off, you even send over some external analyses focusing on specific pieces like Carnage Ladder.
Right. Yeah, those analyses can be really helpful for adding another layer of interpretation.
Totally. So our mission here is to, explore all of this, find the threads that connect it all, and try to really grasp the ideas at the heart of it all.
I think what's really fascinating about this collection is it gives us this really interesting cross-section of creative expression from Carnage 1.0. Only, we're going to be looking at themes of ambition, that drive to achieve something, struggles that come along with that, the importance of self-reliance when things get tough, and even some more abstract ideas about how we're all connected and the role of information in society. It's like we're trying to see the world through their eyes, through their art.
Absolutely. And one of the themes that just leaps out from all this material is ambition. That drive to achieve something and the whole process of overcoming adversity. And I think a good place to start with that is the song Carnage Ladder, with that central image of, well, climbing a ladder, right?
The ladder is such a powerful metaphor here because it has that built-in structure. It's not just about moving. It implies a hierarchy. A series of steps you have to take to get higher. And when Carnage 1 only keeps repeating those lines, "I've been climbing up the ladder, baby. I've been climbing up the ladder lately." It really emphasizes that it's not just a one-time thing. It's this ongoing effort, this constant striving.
It's like they're always pushing upward, never satisfied with where they are, always reaching for that next level.
Exactly. And one of the analyses we have really highlights that constant upward movement, that hunger for progress, and what's fueling that ambition, I think is a very deep sense of self-belief. That line, "Think they'll stop me, but I know that they won't." It's not just dismissing the obstacles. It's this total conviction in their ability to overcome anything that gets in their way. They know there are going to be people trying to hold them back, but they're absolutely certain they'll succeed.
There's this almost defiant attitude there. Like they're saying, bring it on, I can handle anything. And that line that really captures that for me is, either way, see me laughing. It paints this picture of someone who's so focused on their own path that all that negativity from the outside just bounces right off. They're in it for the long haul, and they're going to find joy in the process no matter what anyone else says.
Absolutely. It's that unshakable confidence. And then you add in that comparison, they're slower than molasses. How much faster see me climbing, rising up on the ladder, and suddenly you've got this real competitive spirit.
Yeah.
And it's not just about personal growth. It's about outperforming others, about moving at a different speed, a faster speed.
One of the analyses even calls the song an anthem of defiant ascent, which I think is spot on. It's that self-assuredness, that unwavering perseverance in the face of doubt and negativity that's so powerful. And it speaks to that idea that they have unique skills and a laser focus on rising above all the opposition.
And that brings up an interesting point for me. You've given us this collection with all these different pieces. So how does this outward ambition, this desire for progress, fit with some of the more internal struggles and this emphasis on self-reliance that we see in some of the other pieces?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there's definitely another side to all of this, a more introspective and maybe even vulnerable side. And I think some of the pieces that really highlight that are Carnage Let M in freestyle and Carnage Myself Now. Those seem to give us a much more personal look at things.
In Carnage Let M, in freestyle, those opening lines immediately create this feeling of being under attack. They're coming for me once again, creeping in my backyard. It sets up this sense of confrontation, but it's not entirely clear if it's an external threat or maybe something more internal. What stood out to you there?
For me, it's that feeling of being constantly watched or targeted, like someone's always out to get them. And then you get these really powerful, almost haunting images that suggest past trauma. In the back of my mind, I only see scars, graveyards. It's like this sudden glimpse into a really difficult past.
And that internal struggle becomes even more intense with the imagery of clown faces while they smile at me and all the demons under my bed. It's such a vivid portrayal of inner demons, maybe anxieties or negative thoughts personified.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, what are those demons? Are they past failures, insecurities, or pressures from the outside that they've internalized?
It's really interesting to think about, but then you get this incredibly strong assertion of personal power right after that. On the best day, you couldn't get me even in the worst way, and you cannot enter here. It's like drawing a line, setting a boundary against those forces, both internal and external.
And that final line, inviting them in, is so intriguing. It's almost paradoxical. It makes you question, is this a form of acceptance? Is it a way of confronting those inner struggles head on instead of just trying to keep them out?
Yeah, it's like maybe instead of fighting them off all the time, they're trying to understand them, maybe even integrate them somehow. It's a different way of dealing with adversity.
And it's a strategy that could be really effective. Maybe by acknowledging those demons, by letting them in, you could take away their power.
Now, if we look at Carnage myself, now the focus shifts very directly to this theme of self-reliance.
Totally, that repeated declaration, I only need myself now. It's so powerful. It's this clear statement of independence, like they've cut all ties and are relying solely on themselves. What do you think about that repetition?
It feels like a mantra, a way of reaffirming that independence after some kind of major emotional upheaval. And that line, I believed in you, I never thought you'd be leaving me, really supports that. It suggests a past reliance on someone who ultimately wasn't there, which led to this need for self-sufficiency.
And out of that disappointment, that possible betrayal, comes this realization, the strength I give to you, I can finally give to me. It's reclaiming their power, redirecting that energy inward that was previously focused outward.
Yeah, it's like they've realized they were giving away their strength and now they're taking it back. And that rejection of dependence is so clear in those lines. You can't help me, save me. And unfortunately, I can't save you, baby. It's acknowledging that each person is responsible for themselves and that there's a limit to what one person can do for another.
So we've got these two themes, right? The outward ambition and the inward focus on self-reliance. When you put them together, what kind of picture of Carnage 1nOnly's perspective starts to form for you?
I see someone with this burning drive to achieve, but someone who's also learned that in the end, they can only truly depend on themselves. It's like the external climb is happening alongside this internal strengthening.
It's a really powerful combination. All right. So we've looked at the personal drives and struggles. Now, let's get into some of the more abstract and critical ideas that come up in this material, especially in Hidden Division Codebreaker. This one takes us into a much broader, almost philosophical territory.
This is where things get really mind-bending. Hidden Division Codebreaker introduces these concepts like synchronizing brainwaves, and it describes collective knowledge as the ultimate power. It's a huge shift from the individual struggles we were just talking about. What are your initial thoughts on this?
What's really fascinating here is this jump into the idea of interconnectedness on a neurological level. That phrase, synchronizing brainwaves, suggests a potential for a much deeper kind of communication and shared understanding than we normally experience. And framing collective knowledge as the ultimate power implies that access to information and sharing that information is seen as the most fundamental source of strength.
And there's a strong statement about control in the piece, with the idea that limiting access to free information is a key way to control people. It brings in a more critical perspective on how society is structured.
Right. And that idea of interconnectedness is further emphasized by that statement. We are all connected. We are all conversed within the Earth magnetic field. Now, when we see a phrase like Earth magnetic field, it raises a question, is the source material trying to point to an actual scientific phenomenon here? Or is it more of a metaphorical way to describe a sense of connection between people? What kind of context or reasoning is provided for this idea in the material itself?
It's presented more as a statement of fact within the transcript, but based on the surrounding content, it definitely leans more towards a spiritual or maybe even a pseudoscientific interpretation rather than a strictly scientific one. It seems to be a way of expressing this deep sense of being linked to something larger.
That's an important distinction. So even if it's not scientifically literal, the underlying message is about this shared field or network. And then the transcript goes on to imagine a scenario where this shared consciousness could completely change things like wealth and government power. It really makes you think about what would happen if there was such a fundamental shift in how we relate to each other and to information.
It's like painting a picture of a potential future, or maybe a hidden reality where our minds are linked in ways we don't even realize. And then there's that mention of a human hologram and the possibility of shared experience within this Earth's magnetic field. It's such a mind-blowing image. What do you think the source material is trying to get at with that?
The idea of a human hologram could mean a few things in this context. It could suggest that each person contains a piece of a larger whole, or that our experiences in consciousness are somehow projected or interconnected within this shared field. It definitely leans into this idea that reality is more interconnected and maybe less individually contained than we normally think. This raises a really interesting question for me. How do these grand cosmic ideas about interconnectedness and shared knowledge connect back to the individual ambitions and struggles we were discussing earlier? Is there a link between these seemingly different scales?
That's the key question, right? Maybe that individual drive to climb the ladder or to overcome those inner demons is actually part of a larger collective journey. Or maybe it's even influenced by this interconnectedness. Maybe self-reliance isn't about isolation, but about finding strength within this larger web of existence.
That's a really thought-provoking way to look at it. Maybe it's about strengthening the individual connection within this network so you can connect to the collective in a more meaningful way.
All right, let's shift gears a bit and focus on how all these experiences and perspectives are channeled into creative expression. We've got some really insightful pieces here, especially Moonlight's Embrace poem, Dax C1N0, and Carnage I Like, that explore this connection.
Moonlight's Embrace poem-C1N0 presents this really powerful and unusual idea to pain as a catalyst for deep introspection. It suggests that difficult experiences aren't just negative. They can actually be the driving force behind greater self-awareness and understanding. What do you think about that concept?
I think it's a really interesting take on pain. It's like that idea that things have to break down before they can be rebuilt stronger. And the poem even goes so far as to say the soul is addicted to pain as a means of seeking this understanding. It's a pretty heavy idea.
Yeah, it's intense. Not saying addiction in a negative sense, but more that the soul is drawn to these intense experiences as a way to learn and grow. It says that pain forges a path to self-reflection and growth. It really emphasizes the transformative power of adversity.
And there's this spiritual element woven throughout the poem with mentions of energy, sound waves, and ancient wisdom. It suggests this search for meaning and healing that goes beyond just the emotional or psychological level.
And what's crucial is that creativity, specifically music, is presented as a bridge from pain to healing. It's the act of creating that allows them to process and transform these difficult experiences, turning suffering into something meaningful.
And the poem really stresses the power of words, too. It says they carry power manifesting reality, which highlights the idea that creative expression isn't just passive. It's an active force shaping our understanding and maybe even influencing the world around us.
And talks about finding resilience and a sense of purpose through struggle's embrace, reinforcing this idea that growth comes from facing challenges head-on, not avoiding them, and that concept of continuous growth leading to spiritual maturity gives us this framework for understanding this ongoing journey of self-discovery through both pain and creation.
So we move from this really profound poem to Carnage I Like, where we get a more direct statement from the artist identifying as a writer, and there's this almost unexpected mention of smiling right alongside the writing. What do you make of that pairing?
It could be a conscious effort to stay positive, maybe as a way to deal with the pain and struggles that are fueling the writing. It could be a form of emotional resilience, a way of balancing the intensity of creative exploration with a sense of inner peace.
Yeah, and that hope that the writing will reach and resonate with others speaks to a desire to connect, to share these personal experiences and maybe offer comfort or understanding to people going through similar things. So even if the initial impulse is internal, there's still this desire to connect outward.
Absolutely. And they describe the creative process as a form of vacation and escape, which highlights how therapeutic and freeing it is for them. It's a space where they can process their experiences and express their inner world without any restrictions.
And there's that line about evolution. Took a Pikachu, I've evolved. It seems lighthearted, but it speaks to this constant process of change and growth as an artist and as a person.
It's like they're saying they're not static, they're always evolving. And in the end, it seems like it's about this deep need to create, to express their mind and experiences, but with this underlying hope that it'll find an audience and connect with others who are on their own journeys.
So we see this really powerful cycle. Personal struggles and ambitions fuel creative expression, and that act of creation becomes a way to process those experiences and grow.
We've covered so much, but you mentioned there were also some glimpses into other interesting parts of Carnage 1nOnly's work in the material you sent.
Yeah, we saw moments of real frustration and a confrontational tone in Carnage Halloween with lines like, "Stop, leave me alone," and "they don't care." Definitely had that defiant vibe and a complete disregard for outside opinions.
And in Carnage Location Sample, we got those brief moments of wanting a vacation and searching for tranquility, which suggests a need to step away from the intensity of the creative process or the challenges they're facing.
And that directness in Nuff Said Freestyle, where they just shut down any negativity, really reinforces that theme of self-assurance and not being swayed by what others think.
Carnage 1nOnly point of view had that line, "Why is everybody so upset, never wondering why?" Which hints at maybe feeling misunderstood or questioning why others have the perspectives they do.
And lastly, that line from Carnage Cadence's video, "It's a reminder of the art that remains what I painted," really speaks to the lasting power and importance of the creative work itself.
So when we take a step back and look at it all, Carnage 1nOnly's work as we see it in this collection you've given us really does offer a multifaceted exploration of ambition resilience in the face of internal and external challenges, a strong journey toward self-reliance, and these really interesting explorations of broader ideas about interconnectedness and the power of information. And throughout it all, the act of creating emerges as this crucial tool for navigating life's complexities and finding a way forward.
It's really amazing. You gave us such a rich and diverse collection of material here. And as we've gone through it, it's clear that it touches on themes that are so relevant to anyone who's trying to make progress, struggling with their inner world, or trying to understand the bigger picture. The raw and unfiltered nature of these expressions can offer a really unique and powerful perspective on these universal human experiences.
And that leads us to a final thought for everyone listening, thinking about that recurring theme of overcoming obstacles and the fascinating idea of a potential collective consciousness. What are the ultimate limits, or conversely, the limitless possibilities, when someone truly believes in their ability to rise above their personal challenges and connect with something bigger than themselves? And in a world that's increasingly defined by the flow of information and the shaping of perceptions, what does it really mean to create your own ladder and define your own ascent?
It's a lot to ponder for sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a journey.
A fascinating one for sure.